Hello and welcome to Football League World TV. It's Tuesday morning. We've got our first show of the day. It's the Gillingham Fan Takeover show. My name is Sam Rourke, the chief editor of footballleagueworld.co.uk, and I'm delighted to be joined by Lewis Browning this morning, a freelance journalist and big Gills fan. Lewis, how are we this morning?
Morning, Sam. Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. Not too bad this morning.
Good stuff. During the next 15 or 20 minutes or so, we're going to be talking about all things Gills. Gills fans, if you are watching this live stream, we'd love you to get involved in the comments and we'll speak about some of your comments live on the show. But let's get straight into it. So, Lewis, it was a 10th place finish last term for the Gills in League One. A pretty good season, considering some of the teams that were in the division. What were your expectations heading into this season after what was a pretty good campaign last year?
It was a tough one, really. I think any season you sort of go into, you want natural progress. The last 2 years under Steve Evans, we'd finished 10th both years. Obviously, the first one was the year that was cut short. So it was hard to know what to expect. We lost a couple of big names in the summer. Conor Ogilvie moved on, Jordan Graham moved on. And the league, I think, fair to say, got harder. You had the likes of Wigan coming back. You had the likes of Rotherham coming down, some decent teams coming up. So if your squad's worse and the league's harder, I think you're naturally going to struggle a bit more. And I think that's proved to be the case so far. A lot of fans, I think, were wanting playoffs. I mean, Steve Evans is a decent manager at this level, and he's sort of had three sort of windows now to sort of build what he wants to build. But we've started slow again, and that's been the case the last 3 years, really.
I mean, what were your expectations? Was it kind of a playoff assault, or just kind of solidifying a mid-table finish? Was that kind of what were the objectives you feel?
I think the hopes probably were playoffs, but I think a lot of people did sort of want progress, but perhaps expected mid-table. I think there's obviously still a lot of football to play. I'm not expecting us to finish where we are now if things go well and things go as planned. But yeah, I think expectations are probably a mid-table finish, I think.
Okay, so let's just talk about this season so far then. 18th position Gills find themselves in right now, 16 points from 16 games so far this season. What have been your thoughts on the Gills so far this campaign? Only 3 wins all season and not a whole load of goals scored.
Yeah, it has been frustrating. It's been a slow start, which we've been used to under Evans for the last 3 years now, including this one. As you say, not too many goals scored, not too many wins. There's been quite a few draws, but there's also been games where we perhaps should have got a bit more. We lost 2-1 to Sunderland a couple of weeks ago, and we played the last half hour against 10 men, and we probably should have got something out of that. We were 2-0 up against Bolton, ended up drawing 2-0 in the last few minutes. The wins against Morecambe and Cambridge were great. The wins have been good, but this season has been frustrating. It's been plagued a little bit by injuries. We've recently lost Ollie Lee and Stuart O'Keefe as well, it seems. We've lost our only fit left back or our only left back at the club, that sort of thing. And it's not been ideal, but you can't make excuses. The squad's built to sort of compete. You need a big enough squad. You need a good enough squad. And unfortunately, it's been a frustrating, slow start once again.
Absolutely right. Let's touch on the Accrington game next. Judging by the highlights, it looked like Gills should have won that game on Saturday at Priestfield. Verdane Oliver potentially having one of the misses of the season right at the death. Lewis, what did you make of the game on the weekend? Was that a game you felt like you should have came away with 3 points?
Absolutely, yeah. I think after the Sunderland and the Bolton games, a bit of frustration. We got the win against Doncaster. Just before that, it wasn't pretty, but sometimes you need to win like that. And I thought the game against Accrington, it wasn't going to be pretty either. But I did sort of expect to get something. I mean, all due respect to Accrington, they're a good side. They're a good mid-table side at the minute. But those are the games you do want to be winning if you want to be pushing the top end of the table at home. I think Accrington would have been happier with the point than we were. We had a lot of chances. As you say, Verdane Oliver missed a great chance. There was a period in the second half, sort of in front of the Reigning Men, where we bombarded them. And I think we hit the post or the bar about 3 times within a minute. And I remember Kyle Dempsey hit the post and he I think it was a sort of cross shot. And I sort of thought that's in, but no, it hit the post, we hit the bar. And yeah, as you mentioned earlier on, Sam, we've struggled for goals this season. And that was another occasion where, similar to Sunderland, we failed to break down a a defence that did well enough to keep us out. But I think ourselves as well, we have ourselves to blame for not getting the 3 points, and we probably should have won that one.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just go back a few weeks. That game up at Bolton, obviously Gills found themselves 2-0 up, and 2 second-half goals from Bolton, and it ended up as a draw. That must have been disappointing, given the fact you were 2-0 up and looking like you were going to come away with a really important win at a club that are kind of doing well this season.
Yeah, I mean, going away from home anywhere really now with the fans back in, it's great to get a win. And we went 2-0 up early. I wasn't actually at the game, but I was sort of following it on Twitter as you do. And I was happy. I'd seen the goals, and you think, okay, 2-0 lead. We should, in theory, be able to see this out. You go deep into the second half. It was clear that Bolton were applying some pressure, but you like to think that you've got some experienced defenders in there. Max Amer, Jack Tucker's coming along now in terms of experience as well. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. The first Bolton goal, I think, went in the 86th minute, and I think I tweeted at the time saying, "Buckle up, because you know what happens now." And I think everyone sort of expected that the second goal was going to come. A lot of the time last season, where we had our sort of late playoff push, we were conceding 2-goal leads. I think Northampton at home springs to mind, especially. And unfortunately, it's just the way it is. I remember speaking to a few of the players after that Northampton game, and they were saying, "Why is this happening so often?" And it happened again. I don't know if it's a psychological thing or whatever, but I think it was expected. But that doesn't make it any less frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's touch on Gills' lack of goals next. As we've mentioned earlier on in this show, only 15 goals scored for the Gills this season. It's the joint third worst goal scoring rate in League One as we stand. Obviously, Gills do possess a striker that knows how to score at this level, with Dane Oliver scoring 17 goals last season for the Gills, and John Akinde as well is renowned is a renowned goal scorer in the EFL. Lewis, what do you think the issue is at the moment? Is it simply the likes of Dane Oliver just out of form at the moment?
Yeah, there's been a big change in style. Last year, there was a lot of emphasis on Jordan Graham's partnership with Dane Oliver. Those two linked up well. There was a lot of emphasis on width with Alex McDonald and Jordan Graham. And we didn't really replace Graham. Danny Lloyd's come in, but he likes to operate a bit more centrally at times, and sort of likes to come inside rather than hit the byline. And Steve Evans has spoken about finding different ways of scoring goals. Dane Oliver's spoken a lot too about where his service is going to come from. We thought that might happen when Charlie Kelman came in, but that didn't really work out. I think the style has just changed completely this year. We've gone from playing with a lot of width to playing a narrow diamond. Oliver and Akinde have been playing up front together recently. Oliver, yeah, he's not in the best of form himself. I think he's got 4 or 5 goals this season, but he's struggling for service a little bit. John Akinde splits opinion between Gillingham fans, but the last few weeks he's sort of started to work a bit harder. He started to get those legs going, as our assistant manager Paul Rayner often says, and he's hard to stop. But yeah, we've not found the back of the net as often as we should have done. I think the games against the likes of Sunderland and Accrington highlight that, how we've had the issue sort of breaking the teams down. So yeah, I think Oliver's form plays a lot, a big role in that. But I think also the change in style and having to adapt to a different style, I guess, this season has sort of damaged that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a comment come in from Peglegs on YouTube. I tweeted after going 2-0 up that being 2-0 up, that always makes me nervous, was proven right. I assume you're talking about the Bolton Wanderers game. Right, let's touch on Steve Evans next. Steve Evans, a man that does tend to divide opinion amongst football fans. I'd imagine that's probably the same within the Gills fan base. Lewis, what's your stance on Steve Evans? Is he someone you feel that can take Gills forward?
I think he has taken Gills forward. When he came in 2.5 years ago, really, we were regularly fighting relegation. He took over from Steve Lovell, and the first conversation Evans said he had with Chairman Paul Scally was, make us fighting at the right end of the table. Don't give us a worry going into the last few games of the season, and that's not been the case so far. I like Steve Evans. I think I've been lucky enough to get to know him on a personal level, and he's been great with me. But in terms of the on the pitch stuff, he's passionate. I think everyone knows that. He splits opinion. He gets a lot of yellow cards. He gets a lot of talking tos. But compared to perhaps arguably previous management, he's got the passion that's visible, and I think fans like that. He does split opinion. when he first came in, he held a fans forum, addressed a lot of issues that fans had with him, and I think he won a lot of fans over. There's still some a bit divided. Yeah, I think the majority sort of back him, and I think most of that sort of comes from the fact that we don't think we can get better in terms of a football manager. If he was to move on, I'm not sure we'd be able to get a better manager to take us forward. There's a few frustrating things. He's quite direct. His passion goes over the top sometimes, and I think also he likes to rebuild the whole squad every window almost. So we have these slow starts, which aren't ideal. But yeah, in terms of taking us forward, his contract runs out this year. I wouldn't be surprised to see him move on, but that's a whole different story. But in terms of how he operates the team, I think he's taken us forward, and you never know, he might improve again this year. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, would you say that Steve Evans has stabilised Gillingham as a League One club? Because over the years, Gills have flirted between League Two and League One. Would you say that that's kind of one of his main achievements, is simply stabilising Gills in League One?
I think so. I think apart from the couple of years under Justin Edinburgh, we have always sort of flirted with relegation in League One. I think this might be our 9th year in the league. So, but before that, as you say, we were sort of bouncing up and down, and we were always sort of flirting with those relegation places. Yeah, we've not had any relegation fears under Evans, and we had the first year 2 years ago when the season was cut short. It wasn't really a playoff push, but there was a little bit of ambition there. Last year, fans did start to believe until the season sort of died out towards the back end. And it's nice to sort of be thinking about the top end of the table and the playoff pushes rather than the relegation zone. So I think, yeah, he's stabilised the club in terms of being a solid League One club. There has been no threat of relegation over the last 2 years. Obviously, this year it's a little bit different at the minute, but I do have sort of full faith that if he is our manager throughout the season, that we'll be stable once again in terms of our league position.
There we go. Gillingham fans, if you are watching this live show, get your thoughts in on Steve Evans. What do you make of him as your manager? Are you happy with him at the helm at Priestfield? Right, let's touch on some of Gills' key players next. Influential players playing in that kind of attacking midfield role has attracted interest from an array of EFL clubs over the last few windows. Lewis, just how important do you think Cole Dempsey is to the Gills, and do you expect interest to emerge in him as January looms?
He's important, yeah. He's not only a great player, he's our captain, and he is often spoken about, and so is Steve Evans, about how as a captain he's not the most vocal. We have the likes of Stuart O'Keefe that's perhaps more vocal on the pitch, but Dempsey sort of leads in a professional way. And he spoke about how when he came to Gillingham from Fleetwood and he had a loan spell at Peterborough, he just wanted to start again. He came down south. He wanted to get back to his days at Carlisle, where he was that goal scoring midfielder, making those late runs, making those sort of taking up those edge of the box positions. And I think he's done that. Last couple of years, he's added goals back to his game that he didn't necessarily have when he was at Fleetwood. And yeah, I think he's sort of refound himself, and you can see he is really, I think, a class above. I don't want to say a class above our squad, but you can tell he's the best player out there, really. He's good with the ball. He's exciting. He wants to drive forward. He's got good personality as well, which is always good with the fans. In terms of the interest, I think it's been made clear that he was sort of held on to in the summer despite a bit of interest, and his contract as well is up at the end of the season. So I don't expect him to be a Gillingham player next year, whether that's the calendar year or the football year. We'll wait and see. There will be interest in January, undoubtedly. I'm not sure what the sort of fee will be, but it would be a big loss to lose Dempsey in January. But if that doesn't happen, I do think it'll be in the summer. So, yeah.
Say you did lose Dempsey in January, a club did come in from him. Would you be a little bit concerned about your status as a League One club in terms of a relegation battle? Because, he is, like you say, a very key cog in Steve Evans' side, isn't he?
Yeah, I think it would depend on the position, and it depend how we replaced him, because the last couple of years we've invested well in January. We've not always got it right in the summer, but the January window has tended to not get us out of jail, but improve us a little bit compared to what we were before. So that's always a key part of what the replacement would be. But yeah, in terms of losing Dempsey, it's similar to losing Ogilvy and Graham in the summer. I don't think a club of our status, a club with our sort of budget, we're not going to go out and get a better player. So it's always going to be difficult. Yeah, I think it would depend where we were, but it definitely wouldn't help the situation if we were to lose him.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had another comment in from Peglegs on YouTube. Personally, would like to cash in from the sales of people like Dempsey and Tucker in January. whilst they are key players, they will leave in the summer for free, which adds no value to the team. Lewis, what do you make of that comment?
It's a difficult one. It's something that we've had to deal with for a few years now. The likes of Tom Eves, just before Steve Evans came in, obviously he was scoring 20 goals regularly 2 years in a row for us, and then we were in a position in January where we didn't think he was going to sign a new deal because he wanted to play higher. Obviously, he went on to play with Hull in the Championship, and we sort of thought, do we cash in now in January or do we lose him for free in the summer? I think it depends where your season is. It depends what your ambitions are. If we were sort of 12th or 10th going into January, for example, then you wouldn't want to lose someone like Dempsey or like Tucker because you want your season to sort of end on a good note. But yeah, at the same time, we would lose them for next to nothing really, or nothing at all. So it's a tricky one. It's one that the higher ups have to think of and weigh up, but it wouldn't go down well with the fans who aren't best players at the minute anyway. If we were to lose those two.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's touch on Jack Tucker a little bit more next. As we've already said, the 21-year-old has emerged as one of the Gills' most prized assets. A youngster that's come through the club's ranks and has been playing really well this season. Often been deployed in a kind of central defensive midfield role, hasn't he, of late, kind of in front of the back four. What have you made of his performances this season, Lewis? And is he someone you feel can really go on to kind of a higher level in the future?
Yeah, he struggled a bit last year. I think he sort of burst onto the scene under Steve Evans' first year, and then he dipped off a little bit last year, and not in terms of any poor performances as such, but he wasn't sort of playing at the standards we know he can. And this year, Max Amer returned to the club, who Tucker partnered for most of the season during his first year in the first team, and he looks a bit more comfortable next to him. I think they've got a good relationship. Early part of the season, Tucker was really back to his best, and then the sort of not the system, but in terms of personnel, in terms of the midfield and the back two changed. I think when we all saw Reece Bennett in the team with Amer and Tucker, we thought Bennett might play in midfield because Bennett has sort of been used as a bit of a utility man. Amer played in midfield during his QPR days and a little bit in his early Gillingham years as well. So Tucker was the last person we expected to see in that midfield role, but he did really well. He's sort of been sitting in front of Amer and Bennett recently. He's good on the ball. He likes a shot as well, and I think he's proved he can do that. It's sort of a role that Alfie Jones played during his loan year at Gillingham, sort of at the back and in midfield as well. I see his long-term future as a centre back. I don't think that'll be at Gillingham because, as we mentioned, he's one of our best players. He's still very young. I think every summer we really hear of interest in Tucker. I know he's from the area, as you say, Sam. He came through the academy. I think he'll move on eventually. He could definitely play in the Championship and maybe higher. We'll see how his career progresses as he perhaps arguably plays for a better team, gets better coaching, that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm excited to see how he progresses and feel lucky to have him at Gillingham at the minute.
Yeah, one to certainly keep an eye on for sure within the EFL. Right, let's touch on the January transfer window next. Steve Evans has made it pretty clear that he's looking to add in the January transfer window. Of course, the club of late has been really struck down with an injury crisis, lots of injured players within that Gills team. Lewis, what do you think the Gills need in January in terms of new personnel?
I think the main thing not the main thing, but one of the key things, as we mentioned, would be to keep hold of key players. But then in terms of the additions, I think, we definitely need another striker. It didn't really work out with Charlie Kelman. He's gone back to QPR now. And I think with Verdane Oliver and John Akinde are only real options up front. We do need at least another man in there. Early part of the season, we had the likes of Mr. Ficario and Danny Lloyd playing up front. They're not even Max Amer. They're not really strikers. So we need another one. We need some wide players. I think if we're to go back to really the Steve Evans and Paul Rayner DNA, really, it'd be good to get some width in there. Danny Lloyd's played out there a little bit, but as I said before, he likes to come inside rather than sort of take people on. Mr. Ficario has been key, but he struggles with his fitness sometimes. So I think I think Evans likes to play sort of 4-2-3-1. We see the attacking midfielder move on in recent years. Ollie Lee came in last year in January, and he sort of progressed us really well. and we're just struggling at the minute. Cole Dempsey's been playing the attacking midfielder role, but I think he's perhaps better coming from deep. So maybe a attacking midfielder, a couple of wingers, a left back as well would be quite key, because Dave Tatunda's got an injury at the minute, and he's had a slow start to life at Gillingham. He was sort of finding his form before his injury. Robbie McKenzie's been filling in well, but I think we do need another left-sided player. But I wouldn't be surprised to see sort of 4 or 5 players coming in January to sort of really give the whole squad a boost.
Yeah, absolutely. Gills fans, get your comments in. Who would you like to see the club sign as January transfer window approaches? Right, let's just touch on this weekend's game then. It is the FA Cup this weekend. Gills play host to Cheltenham Town at Priestfield. Lewis, would you like a bit of an FA Cup run for the Gills this season?
Yeah, who wouldn't? I think everyone sort of wants that big tie, don't they? If you're a lower league fan, but to get those big ties, you do have to get through the early rounds. Cheltenham was not an easy game. We were knocked out the Carabao Cup by them at home as well, so we know what their threats are. Obviously, they're a fellow League One club, so it's not the easiest game. But you've got to fancy your chances at home. We've had some good cup runs over the years. We went to Stoke under Steve Evans. We've had West Ham at home under Steve Evans. We've had Tottenham away, which was before Evans' time, but a great experience. And I think everyone, as a lower league fan, when it gets to sort of FA Cup time, they dream of those big ties away from home or at home. And, you know, it'd be nice to have a run in the competition and earn some money and get a big side too.
Absolutely. Let's just finally touch on the attendances at Priestfield this season. I think I'm right in saying that the game against Accrington was the lowest attendance you've had all season. Was it 3,609, something like that? A pretty low attendance, really, in comparison to what you have had in previous seasons. Is that a bit of a concern, Lewis, the fact that the numbers aren't there at the moment in terms of the attendances?
Yeah, it's a concern. I think year on year, the average attendance is going down at Priestfield. Championship days obviously are a bit different back in sort of early 2000s, but when I started going sort of back end of the 2000s, when I was younger, you were getting sort of 7,000 plus, and that's almost half now. It's a big issue. I think the likes of Charlton at home and Sunderland at home, where they bring big away followings, sort of glimpses over the fact that the home support isn't there, and you sort of look at the stands at Priestfield on a match day and you think, wow, this is empty, and now it's sort of well below 4,000. There's been a lot of controversy with the chairman. There was a game recently where there were many protests and people rejected. The chairman did a video sort of criticising fans, and there's a bit of back and forth between the two. And I think fans are sort of starting to sort of raise their voice with their tickets and their money, really, and not going to games. I like to think of myself as quite a passionate Gillingham fan, and I'm not losing the love for it, but it sometimes I do feel that disillusion between the club and the fans with the chairman recently. And I think whatever your opinion is on the situation higher up at Gillingham at the minute, no one can argue that there's an issue with the attendance, because that brings money into the club, that sort of boosts the players, and it sort of shows how the fans feel about the club. So I think it's an issue, and it's only going to get worse, to be honest, until something changes. But we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the club have reduced the ticket prices for this weekend's game in the FA Cup, so hopefully that draws in the crowds at Priestfield. Right, well, that concludes the Gillingham fan takeover show on Football League World TV. Lewis, thanks so much for joining me this morning. It's great to have you on. We've got plenty more shows to come later on Football League World TV, so make sure you stay tuned. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to FLW TV on YouTube. We do appreciate all the new subscribers. But Lewis, thanks once again, and we'll catch up soon.